Welcome to Talk Treatises.
It's good to be here.
Today we are looking at a conflict. Not, a war or a political fight, but a battle between two art forms.
We're talking about the image versus the word.
Exactly. Why a picture can do things a poem can't. And maybe more importantly, why a poem can do things a painting shouldn't even try.
And it sounds abstract, but it's really not. It sort of dictates everything from how you read a book to how you experience a film.
To get into all this, we're focusing on a single mystery. It involves a famous marble statue, a Roman poem, and an 18th century German critic named Gotthold Ephraim Lessing.
The work itself is Laocoon, an essay upon the limits of painting and poetry.
And it sounds, I have to say, incredibly dry.
Oh, it does. Published in 1766, an essay on aesthetics. But it actually, it really did rewrite the rules for what we think of as modern art. It's basically the grandfather of that whole show don't tell rule.
But he doesn't start with theory. He starts with a scene, a death scene, really. He starts with the Laocoon.
Right. The statue. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it shows a Trojan priest, Laocoon, and his two sons.
And they are having a very, very bad day.
A terrible day. They're being crushed to death by these giant sea serpents. It's incredibly intense.
You can see the muscles straining, the bodies twisting. It's just a snapshot of pure agony.
But Lessing notices something weird about the priest's face. If you know the story from Virgil's Aeneid, this is supposed to be the most excruciating moment imaginable.
Virgil writes that Laocoon lets out horrible screams to the stars, clamors horrendos. It's this bellowing, terrifying sound.
Exactly. But then you look at the statue, and his mouth it's barely open. It's not a scream. It's more of a sigh.
So that's the mystery. Why the difference? If the poem has him screaming his head off, why did the sculptor basically tell him to keep it down?
Before Lessing, the big answer came from a guy named Johann Joachim Winckelmann. And you have to understand, Winckelmann was the celebrity art historian of his day.
What he said went.
Pretty much. And his theory was all about this idea of noble simplicity and quiet grandeur.
Okay, what does that mean?
He argued that the sculptor made Laocoon silent to show a great and steadfast soul. The idea was that ancient Greeks were stoics. A true hero wouldn't debase himself by screaming.
The old stiff upper lip argument. Real men don't cry or get crushed by sea serpents and make a fuss.
That was the idea. It was a moral lesson, but Lessing, he just wasn't buying it.
He basically asks if Winckelmann has ever actually read any Greek literature.
It's a pretty scathing takedown. He points out that this whole stiff upper lip thing is a very modern, very Northern European idea. The ancient Greeks, they screamed and cried all the time.
He brings receipts too.
Oh yeah. He goes straight to Homer's Iliad. When a hero gets wounded, he cries out. Venus gets a tiny scratch on her hand and she screams.
And Mars, the god of war, gets stabbed. And Homer says he bellows with the force of 10,000 men.
10,000. Can you imagine that sound? If the god of war can scream, surely a priest getting crushed to death gets a pass.
Lessing even uses a play. Sophocles' Philoctetes. The whole plot is about a hero who got left on an island because his wound festered and his screaming was too annoying.
He was literally ruining their prayers. But he's still the hero of the story.
Right.
So Lessing concludes that the silence in the statue isn't about morals or stoicism. It has to be about the laws of art.
This is the big pivot. The sculptor didn't silence him because Laocoon was tough. He silenced him because a screaming statue is a bad idea.
Exactly. And this leads to his main thesis, the law of beauty.
Okay, let's unpack that. How does beauty stop a man from screaming?
Lessing says that for the ancient Greeks, the highest law of visual art, what he calls plastic arts, so sculpture and painting, was beauty. Everything else had to serve beauty, even passion, even expression.
And scream just isn't beautiful.
I mean, think about it physically. Your face contorts, your jaw drops open. Lessing calls a screaming mouth a repulsive cavity.
It's just a hole in the face. It's ugly.
And here's the key. Sculpture is permanent. If you carve that ugly face into marble, it's frozen there forever. The viewer is forced to stare at that grimace for eternity.
In a movie, a scream is over in a second. In marble, it's there for 2,000 years.
And the longer you look at it, the less tragic it becomes, and the more it just looks grotesque. So the sculptor had to compromise. He dialed down the scream to a sigh.
So you can feel the pain without being disgusted by the face.
Precisely. He sacrificed the literal truth for the sake of artistic beauty. The poet doesn't have that problem.
Right. Virgil can just write the words, horrible screams.
And you hear it in your mind, but you aren't forced to stare at a distorted face. The word passes, The statue remains.
He uses that other example too, right? The painter Timanthes.
Yes, the sacrifice of Iphigenia. The painter had to show her father, Agamemnon, watching her die. I mean, that's the absolute peak of grief. How do you paint that face without making it hideous?
You can't.
So he didn't. He painted Agamemnon with his face covered by a veil.
Which is brilliant.
It's genius, because he's admitting his medium has limits. And he knows that whatever we imagine is happening behind that cloth is way more powerful than anything he could actually paint.
And that idea, leaving room for the imagination, that seems to be the key to everything else he argues. This is where we get to the big split. Space versus time.
This is the part that's still taught in art schools. It's his most famous idea. He wanted to completely destroy that old saying, painting is dumb poetry and poetry is speaking painting.
The idea that they're basically the same thing, just with different tools.
And Lessing says no, absolutely not. They operate in fundamentally different dimensions. Visual art painting, sculpture exists in space.
It's all there at once. Side by side, it's static.
Which means it can only show a single moment in time, just one snapshot. And if you only get one frame, which one do you choose?
Your gut says you choose the climax, the big moment, the scream.
But Lessing says that's the worst choice you can make. You never pick the climax. You pick what he calls the fruitful moment.
The fruitful moment. I like that. What is it?
It's the moment just before or just after the peak of the action.
Why?
Because the imagination needs somewhere to go. If you show me the absolute peak, the full scream, my mind has nothing to do. It's over. But if you show me the sigh, the struggle before the scream, my mind completes the action.
It makes the viewer an active participant.
Exactly. The statue has to be pregnant with the future because it doesn't have a future. Now, poetry is the opposite. It exists in time.
It's a sequence. One word after another.
So it doesn't have to pick one moment. It can show the whole process. Virgil's poem can describe the snakes approaching, then the bite, then the scream, then the death. The ugly parts are fleeting.
This is why reading a gruesome scene in a book can be thrilling, but seeing a photo of the same thing might just be repulsive.
That's the distinction. The painter is trapped in stillness. The poet has freedom of movement.
And Lessing uses this to attack poets who try to act like painters. I found this part fascinating. He really hates descriptive poetry.
Oh, he despises it. He thinks it's a total failure of the medium.
We've all read this. The author stops the story for 2 pages to describe a character's face. She had eyes like sapphires, lips like rubies, a swan-like neck.
And by the time you get to the neck, you've forgotten the eyes. Lessing's point is that words are terrible at building a physical image. A list of features doesn't create a face in your mind, it's just a checklist.
It's like a police sketch artist reading from a list. You get a collection of parts, not a person.
Exactly. The poet is trying to work in space, but he's using a tool meant for time. It just doesn't work.
So what's the right way to do it? How does a poet describe beauty? He goes back to Homer.
This is so smart. He brings up Helen of Troy, the most beautiful woman in the world. But Homer almost never describes what she looks like.
So how do we know she's beautiful?
He describes the effect of her beauty. There's a scene where the old men of Troy, who have lost sons in this war because of her, they see her walk by and they whisper to each other, "It is worth it."
Wow.
It is no blame to suffer so long for such a woman. He describes an action, their reaction, not a static object. He shows he doesn't tell.
He turns a noun into a verb.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
He does the same thing comparing the shield of Achilles in Homer to the shield of Aeneas in Virgil. Virgil just gives you a list of the images on the shield. It's like a museum catalog. It's boring.
And Homer.
Homer describes the god Vulcan making the shield. We're in the forge, we see the hammer, we see the images coming to life. He turns the object into a story. That's how you paint with words.
So, to sum up, painting is for bodies in space. Poetry is for actions in time.
And when you mix them up, you get bad art. But there is one last area to cover, the ugly.
We know the screen is ugly, but can art ever be ugly on purpose?
Lessing says painting basically can't. Because it's permanent, ugliness in a painting is just repulsive. It creates disgust, and you just want to look away.
But poetry can handle it.
Poetry can use ugliness, but only as an ingredient to create another effect, like making a character ridiculous or terrifying.
Like a villain.
Right, Thersites in the Iliad. He's described as the ugliest man in the whole army, but it's to make him seem pathetic and laughable next to the heroes.
But there's a line you can't cross. The disgusting.
That's the hard limit. The disgusting is when the physical sensation of revulsion is so strong it overpowers everything else. It just kills the art.
In Virgil's poem, he talks about the snake's venom and slime.
Yeah, and it's gross, but it passes quickly and adds to the horror.
Yeah.
If a painter rendered that slime in perfect, glistening detail...
You'd stop feeling terror and just feel sick.
Exactly. You'd have a gag reflex, not an aesthetic experience.
It's all about managing the user experience in a way. He's doing UX design for art.
That's a great way to think about it.
Well, speaking of user experience, let's put these 18th century ideas to the test. It's time for our thought experiments segment.
And a quick disclaimer. These are purely hypothetical scenarios for educational and entertainment purposes.
Okay, experiment 1. The screaming app.
Go on.
You're at the Vatican, in front of the Laocoon. You put on some AR glasses. The app scans the statue, and suddenly it animates. The chest heaves and the mouth opens wide into that repulsive cavity. And in your ears, you hear a horrible, blood-curdling scream.
Okay, so we're forcing the element of time, sound, and motion onto the object in space.
We're correcting the statue to match the poem. Is it better art? It's more accurate, for sure.
Oh, Lessing would absolutely hate this. He would despise it.
Why? It's more information. More realism.
Because you've completely destroyed the fruitful moment. You've killed the imagination. By showing the scream, you leave nothing for the viewer to do. You're not empathizing with Laocoon anymore. You're just being assaulted by noise.
It turns a tragedy into a cheap jump scare.
Precisely. It turns a masterpiece into a theme park animatronic. It proves his point that more information doesn't equal better art. In fact, it can make it worse.
It's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
Okay, experiment 2. The descriptive policeman.
I like the sound of this.
Right. A crime's been committed. 2 witnesses. Witness A is a poet who uses the Homeric method describing effects. Witness B is a sketch artist who uses the bad list method.
So witness B, the sketch artist, says suspect had wide-set blue eyes, a scar on his left cheek, a slightly hooked nose.
Boring description, but perfect for the police.
You need that list. You need the static spatial details to identify someone.
Now, witness A, the poet, says, he had an aura of desperation that made the room feel cold. When he spoke, the clerk dropped her pen in fear.
Beautiful writing.
And completely useless for finding the guy. Sarge, be on the lookout for a man who makes rooms feel cold.
You'll never catch him. But, and this is the key, if you're a lawyer in court trying to convince a jury of his character, you want the poet.
Because the poet conveys the emotional truth, while the sketch artist just gives you the physical facts.
Exactly. Lessing isn't saying lists are bad. He's saying they aren't art. Art is about creating an illusion, an emotion. A police report is about identification. Different jobs, different tools.
It's why AI art prompts can feel so empty. You just feed it a list of features.
It's a checklist trying to pass as a soul.
So, to wrap this all up, we started with a scream that wasn't there.
And learned it wasn't about the Greeks being tough, it was about the rules of the game.
Visual art is space. It needs that fruitful moment right before the climax to let our imagination run wild.
And poetry is time. It's all about action and movement, showing the effects of things, not just listing their parts.
They're neighbors, not twins.
And they should really stop trying to do each other's jobs.
I want to leave you with one final thought. We talked about that screaming app, but in a way, we live in that world now. Yeah. Cinema, video games.
Media that finally combines space and time.
Exactly. A movie gives you the visual image, but it moves like a poem.
So have we overcome Lessing's limits? Or have we just drowned the imagination with too much information?
Think about the last big action movie you saw. It showed you everything. The explosion, the impact, the scream. There was no veil, no side.
If the screen does all the screaming for you, there's no room left for you to feel it yourself.
Is there any fruitful moment left? Or are we just becoming passive consumers of sensation?
The more we see, maybe the less we feel.
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Lessing's Laocoon.
My pleasure.
We'll see you next time.